Today's sustainable brown girl is Brittany Idleburg, the creator behind the Live Life Electrified blog. In 2017, Brittany and her husband bought their first electric vehicle, a Tesla Model S, and has since begun sharing her experience as an EV owner, as well as her eco friendly journey on her blog and Instagram. We are so excited to have you today, Brittany.
I'm so happy to be here. I love this podcast, so I'm really excited.
Yay. Thanks so much. So, I've been following you for a while on Instagram, and you provide so much knowledge when it comes to electric vehicles. But I always like to start at the beginning. So, let us know how you became interested in sustainability.
Oh, well, it's kind of funny because it was because of the EV.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were like, well, for sustainability, I just kind of was in that world, the EV world,
Right.
and I'm learning about how the energy industry is like one of the biggest culprits of carbon emissions. And I'm like, okay. And obviously, the biggest part of that is transportation. So I'm like, okay, that's good. I feel better about my choice, but I want to do more,
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to dig into it, and I studied. Well, one of my studies was social inequality. So I kind of knew that a little bit about environmental racism. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I want to do more, especially as a Black woman from my community." And so
Yes.
that kind of drove me to learn more about just being sustainable, right? Like outside of my vehicle, there's other things that I can do. And I kind of, in doing that research, I realized there's so many ways that I'm already sustainable.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, man, like a lot of Black and brown communities, we are sustainable. That is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the base. That's like our foundation
Right.
in a lot of our cultures. And so then I was like, okay, some of the things I'm already doing, to reduce waste and lower my own emissions. But then there's other things that I can do. So I was learning about it, and then I just got really into it, and I was doing it in my own life, and I just decided to start sharing more about it, like on Instagram and my blog. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was really I became sustainable, or intentionally
Mm-hmm.
sustainable, from the EV. It's not
Yeah.
weird.
No, that totally makes sense. So what led you to purchase an electric vehicle?
So at the time, uh, my husband and I were moving to Atlanta, where we currently are living,
Mhm.
from Connecticut. We were in Stamford, Connecticut, which is right like maybe 30 minutes outside of New York City. So you don't really need a car.
Yeah.
You can take trains and buses and you're okay. But um, we knew we were going to come here. We knew we would need a car because you drive a lot
Yeah.
in Atlanta, and maybe it's just in Georgia. Actually, let me say that outside of New York, because I'm from New York. So outside of New York and the tri-state area, you tend to drive more.
Mhm.
Um,
The South in general, we don't have a lot of,
yeah.
public transportation.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, we need another car. My husband had one car. And I had got rid of my car because I was like, oh, I don't need this car. But then we were moving. So I'm like, okay, we do need another car. So
Uh-huh.
we both were fans of the Model S.
Mhm.
I actually, for my birthday, like the year prior to when we bought it, so maybe 2016, we bought it in 2017. My husband gave me a ride in a Tesla. Like he set up, scheduled a test
Oh,
drive for me because I was so
fun.
into the car, and he was
Mhm.
like, "You gotta just drive it." And I fell in love. Like I was like, "Oh my god, this car is just so amazing." And I was already a car person. My father was a mechanic until I was like maybe 15, 16. So I kind of always grew up with that uh, kind of appreciation for
Mhm.
cars. And so my father had even told me, my father has since passed away, but he used to talk about like there's gonna be a car, it's gonna drive itself, it's gonna be electric, it's gonna be something completely new. So I kind of heard of a Tesla. I didn't know at the time what it was gonna be. So when it came out, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what he was talking about.
Mhm.
Um, and actually, he he was alive when I went for the test drive. I was like, "Oh my god, I drove this car! It was amazing!" And then fast forward, after he passed away, we decided to move to Atlanta, and we were like, "Okay, we definitely want to do this." We wanted to get a car that would be safe because there's so much driving. We wanted to
Mhm.
be kind of reliable, which after doing the test drive, you're excited about the car. But I coming from gas cars and only really knowing about gas and internal combustion engines, I was like, okay, I'm a car girl, but I don't know anything about electric cars, and it's kind of scary, like that range anxiety. It
Right.
was real for me. And so I was like, okay, I want to do this, but how reliable is it? And then after I did my own research and my husband, um, we felt like a lot better because there is a network out there. And it really it was enlightening for me because
Mhm.
I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know anything about that industry. So we decided to do it. And we bought the car right before we moved down to Atlanta here. And we made sure that our complex that we live in has EV charging so that that
Mhm.
wouldn't be too much of an issue for us. Like, honestly, every day I wake up, I have a full battery. I'm ready to go.
Nice.
So it was
Mhm.
like, okay, those type of things. But also just, we had already done the research. We knew that the charging stations are there if we ever need it. So that really was what drove us, and we knew we wanted something that was going to be long lasting, and we knew that electric vehicles were the future.
Right.
So that really, like, okay, all of those things aligned. And then thinking like, wow, we could lower our carbon emissions, like that's kind of like, and like I said, then fast forward into our lifestyle now. My lifestyle now
Uh-huh.
is completely more sustainable, but at that time, even just that little bit of change was kind of exciting to me. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that, like, yeah, let's do it. And so we ended up doing it, and we drove our Tesla from Connecticut to Atlanta, like within a month of ownership. It was,
Wow.
yeah, I'm
You've
not gonna lie, even though I did the research, I was still a little bit scared.
Exactly. I would say that's probably one of the things that people are most concerned about when it comes to electric vehicles. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
the range anxiety. So,
Yes.
what
Yes.
can you like maybe let people know like what how they could go long distances with with an electric vehicle?
Yeah, so range anxiety comes from the like that fear of not thinking your battery will last
Mhm.
until your next charge or to your next destination. But in reality, there are so many charging options, and they're not nowhere near as many as gas stations.
Right.
But I think people may only think of like there's just one, or I've only ever seen two, and that's okay. I get that, but there are so many out there. There are some at malls. They're at supermarkets now. Like I said, in my
Yeah.
apartment complex, so now they're in residential areas. And
Mhm.
the charging is depends on the car, and that particular charging station. It varies from maybe 15 minutes to 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it just depends. And then it depends, maybe you have a older car and then it's going to take you 40 minutes. But like I said, if they're at a restaurant or if they're at the mall, while
Right.
I'm shopping, my car is just sitting. It kind of works,
Yeah, that
to
goes
have
by
it charged
fast.
at the same time.
Mhm.
Exactly. So I think that was a little bit like something that I had to learn too, and kind of like, oh wow, this is actually not that bad. There are a lot more charging options than I guess I have paid attention to, because you just look for gas stations when
Right.
you're driving your car. You're not really thinking about anything else.
Right.
But there are a lot of them.
About how far can you go on one charge?
So my battery in particular, excuse me, I can go 200. 70
Wow.
miles on a charge.
That's
Yeah.
far.
And
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because actually my battery is like very small compared to what there is now.
Oh. Uh-huh.
So from 2017 to 2021, there's been so much advancements in technology. Now they have batteries that can go over 300, 330,
Wow.
350. There are companies coming out now with cars that they are anticipating their battery range will be 500 miles.
Wow.
And now you're really like beating out, ice car or internal combustion engine cars. So like
Right.
your traditional gas car, you're gonna have to stop for gas before you would have to stop for a charge. Um,
Yeah.
and there are apps that you can use to see
Okay.
where the stations are along your trip. In the Tesla, it plans your trip according to where there are Tesla chargers. Um,
Mm.
and the Tesla chargers are superchargers, but not all of them are superchargers. So it would tell you how long you have to be at a particular station to get to your next location, wherever
That's convenient.
Yeah, yeah. And then
Wow.
you can always plan because I know, like, for me, I like certain stations better. Like, oh, I like that Panera versus the McDonald's, or whatever
Yeah.
it is. It's like, oh, I kind of want to eat that today, or oh, let's go to the other place that has that pizza spot that we like. So, as you kind of
Mhm.
learn, you can kind of choose, a little bit better of what location you want to charge at.
Yeah, that's really cool though, because if you are on a road trip, it kind of helps you
Exactly.
to plan your trip a little bit better and maybe see something that you
Exactly.
wouldn't have seen before.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to talk about maybe the pros and cons of having an electric vehicle. We can maybe just focus on the Tesla since that's what you have. So let's start with the financial investment. Do you think that it's worth it to invest in an electric vehicle?
Yes,
Of course.
because this is right. But because so even aside from Tesla, right? I have a Tesla. It's a great car. But electric vehicles in general just require less maintenance. I
Really?
I grew up, like I said, under the hood with my father, but there is no under the hood for electric vehicles. You got your battery, you got your wipers, you got tires, and brakes are a big deal.
Hmm.
But so far, Tesla hasn't been out long enough to have any issues with batteries yet. So that's not a thing. At least we know that I think they've had a car that just runs, and I think so far they've gone like 1,000,000 miles with
Wow.
no issues on the battery. So, that's
Wow.
longer than your standard engine would last. You can, I mean, in some really high end cars, maybe push 250,000 to 300,000 miles.
Hmm.
But, when you pass that, that's a big deal. So you're going to
Hmm.
have your car for a long time, and then you won't have to put as much into it. Depending on where you charge and maybe how you charge. I've seen people say that they had a what's the car? Mercedes, and they switched to electric. And they said that their gas went from 600 a month to electricity increasing only $30.
Wow.
It's a lot of
That's worth
savings,
it. Oh, yeah,
it's a
for
huge
sure.
savings. And then it's like, okay, you have less maintenance, you have cheaper gas, or just cheaper fuel, right? From gas to electric.
Mhm.
And then there's also the emissions, you're doing a good thing, so that was a big reason of why I think, more people should, hopefully everyone will just get an electric vehicle, and then there are options, there are lots of options. And then even if you charge and you pay for your charging at like a third party charger, so you don't have it at your house, it's still not going to be I don't know how much it is. Maybe $3 for a gallon. You're not gonna
Okay.
have that. You can maybe pay $3 total just to charge your whole battery. You
Right,
know,
right,
I think,
right.
and I've gone to some of the third party chargers because I wanted to kind of get a feel for all of the EV options. I've even charged at like a at my aunt's house. I've plugged in like a three-prong charge into my car just to test it out, and it's the slowest option, by far the slowest option. But it still did not affect her electric bill. I asked her like how was it? She was like, I don't notice a difference.
Oh, good.
And
Wow.
she was nervous. She was like, "Oh
Yeah,
my
I
god,
bet.
you're you're plugging up your whole car. What?" And I was like, "No, it's not gonna be bad. At least that's what Tesla said." um, so it was like, "Okay, if it's bad, let me know. I'll cover it for you." But I want to just do that experiment, and it ended up. She was like, "I don't even notice a difference.
Wow.
I don't notice it at all." A friend of mine, I charged at her house, and she was like, "My bill was lower that month that you charged." She said, "I
What?
don't know what your car did." But I think because it also kind of it manages your electricity. So it kind of
Mm,
maybe that's what it was doing for her at that time. I don't know. But I don't think it is, I think that it's a good option just because of those different savings.
right,
And then I also think that aside from electric vehicles, even if we don't do it every person, if they could just have more electric transportation,
right.
like a bus, school
Exactly.
buses, public buses, like that would even cut down so much. It would be drastic
Mhm.
for carbon emissions.
For
So even
sure.
that is another great option in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a great option. I know in Atlanta we have the streetcars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
can do things like that too.
yeah, yeah.
So do you know, are there any tax credits for getting an EV?
Yes, there are. So the former president tried to get rid of them. So it was kind of like you want to rush to get yours. If you know
Right.
you wanted to do it, obviously, and you had the money, you wanted to do it quickly. But Biden is trying to roll it out again and extend some of those tax incentives. And actually, when I bought my car, I was able to get um, tax incentive, and it was just like it helped drastically to cut the price. So when people think about the cost, consider that. Look in your state and see what's available, far as different like rebates and tax incentives on a state level. Because even if the federal government gets rid of it, maybe your state doesn't. You know, and I know that was the case for us. We were able to get at that time federal and state, and hopefully Biden will do that again, or whomever will
Mhm.
do that again. But
Mhm.
there definitely are. You just gotta do the research because it's not in every state.
Right, exactly. I feel
Yes,
like
and
probably
then it's
Georgia doesn't
not the
have tax
same
credits.
price for every incentive. So you kind of
Exactly.
got to do your research on it, but they're out there, and it really helps with the price because I know that's a complaint people have had that electric vehicles are so expensive
Yeah.
and there aren't as many of them, so there aren't so many used versions.
Mhm.
Where you can kind of get your car cheaper if it's used, and I understand that, but maybe you can get a tax incentive. And then also if you build like a charger station, if you have a garage, that is also some way you can write that off in your taxes as well. So that could help
Oh.
you, if you think about, okay, I'm saving on gas because I built or I had a charge station installed in my garage, like a unit installed, then you can kind of help alleviate some of the costs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a good option to save a
Yeah.
little bit of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the environmental benefits of owning an EV. So, of course, that's going to reduce your carbon emissions. And what else are some benefits?
Um, well, you're decreasing your carbon emissions.
Hmm.
And that alone is gonna kind of have like almost like a trickle down effect on
Right.
other, you know, environmentalism is so intersectional, you know, so it's
Yes.
going to have other benefits to it as well. um and also I think people have tried to have made the argument that EVs are actually not as good, but in the long run when you do the analysis you emit way less carbon than a gas car. So they
Right.
say that building the car, maybe you are still emitting, but over the longevity of the lifespan, you emit a lot less. Um, and then also, I think it just comes down to like other things like noise pollution, right? Because
Mm.
there's no engine, there's no muffler, there's no revving, and
Mm-hmm.
that helps also with the environment. um,
That's
Carbon
true.
emissions, noise pollution, you got air pollution, because aside from carbon emissions, there's also methane and other things that are
Right.
also released into the air. That also, all of those things kind of help. And then you have, like I said, that intersectionality. So now you have in that neighborhood where there are or more EV cars, you're going to have people who are healthier. They have bigger lung capacity. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, it's circular, you know.
Exactly.
And then hopefully you'll be like me, and the EV will lead you to other sustainable lifestyle choices, you know, because
Right.
it's kind of like I think I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, man, this car like drove me to sustainability. Like I like
Yes.
after having it drove me to, like I said, more intentional sustainability.
Uh-huh.
It kind of like led me there, you know. So from there, I'm able to like do other things with the car, or it inspired other things
Mm-hmm.
in my daily life, you know. So hopefully that is also another way it can kind of help with the
Yeah.
environment. And like I said, having more electric transportation options aside from just a car, your individual car, by having more of those options. Because once the science can catch up, where if you can have it in a car, you can then have it in a bus, you can have it in a semi truck. You know, people now they have electric lawnmowers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the more that we can kind of get used to EVs, then the more we can kind of get used to electric transportation in general and
Yep.
all of its benefits, motorcycles, bicycles, those bird scooters that I see around all the time, you
Yes.
know, all types of things. So I think that
Exactly.
it will have some direct effects, but also there will be indirect benefits to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like it'll be really amazing when we can take what we've learned from the cars and then be able to translate that into other forms of
Exactly.
transportation.
And
Yeah.
actually, even airplanes are now
Yeah.
are doing research on how they can cut back using some of that same
Right.
technology.
Right. That
And
would
I
be
know
amazing.
that Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, opened he left his the technology in his cars open. It's not patent, it's not, you
Oh.
know, secret, because he said his ultimate goal is just sustainability and to
Mhm.
increase sustainable transportation options. And so this way now you have other cars can kind of like, okay, let me look this up and see what did he put in his car. And then you can have bus companies and truck companies and airplane companies and so forth. So hopefully it will have, like I said, more indirect um, effects as well on the environment, and then health and, you know, just awareness for people, you know, because I know
Yes.
that I even just driving my car, people are like, what is that? And
Right.
I love it. Like I'm like, you never heard of Tesla? Let me tell you about it. Let me tell you about electric cars. And you know, like I'm a nerd about it. So I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, that's actually my next question. What have been the social impacts of owning a Tesla? Because I know whenever I see one driving down the street, like, I turn my head and I'm like, oh, look at that person. So how are
Yeah.
you treated by strangers, friends, family?
Oh, so it's funny because it kind of changes. Like when we first got the car, people were like, "Aren't you scared it's gonna die? What if your
Mhm.
battery dies?" And I'm like, "What if your car runs out of gas?" It's you gotta change your mindset a little bit.
Right.
And they were like, "Oh yeah," like that could happen. I'm like, "Yeah, that
Yeah.
happened,"
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Um, so I think that a lot of like family and friends were thinking about that. Then people thought, oh my gosh, I've had people say, you must be rich. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm just a regular person.
Uh-huh.
I promise you, it's not the most affordable car, it's not cheap,
Right.
but having an electric vehicle is actually more affordable than some people may think. That even Tesla has come out with uh, cheaper options, so they are trying to be more comparable to a Honda Accord. So if you can
Wow.
buy a Honda Accord, then
Mhm.
hopefully you can buy one of the Tesla models.
Right.
Nissan Leaf and Chevy Bolt, they've been out for a long time, and they're a way cheaper car than people may think when they think electric. You think it's like some really big investment, but it's actually not. So I've had that kind of reaction, and I'm like I said, I love all of it because I'm just like I just want to tell more and more people about it, and like, no,
Yep.
you can drive electric. This is how you can
Yeah.
do it. And then I also think that because electric vehicles kind of ties into sustainability for me. The idea of being financially sustainable comes into play. And really, when you think about like saving and your credit score, all of those things tie into getting a Tesla. You don't have to be rich if you have a high enough score, which doesn't depend on your income, which is really good in that sense. There are different options depending on the person, and obviously everyone's situation is different. But there are so many options for affording the car. So that's kind of one reaction I've had. People have just wanted to know what is it. In the Tesla, there's like a big screen, and it's like right in the middle, right
Mhm.
next to the driver's seat and the passenger seat. And I had a guy one time, I was at a stoplight, and the guy was like at the bus stop, and he said, "What's that iPad in your car?" And I was like, it controls everything. He said, "Whoa, what kind of car is that?" And I was like, "It's a Tesla. It's electric. Like, look it up. The light's green. I gotta go." you know, but it was like, I think that it's a learning experience for a lot of people when they see it. And then there's some people who know about it and they think, "Oh man, I wish I could." And I'm kind of like, "You can. Let me tell you how." So there's that. And then there's like the other side of it, which is like there's a bad side to anything, right? When
Mhm.
I'm driving the car by myself, I've had people say, "Oh, what does your husband do?" And I think,
Oh,
"What husband? I'm the only person in the car." Right?
wow.
Yeah,
Rude.
right. So I'm like, "Hmm, okay, that's an odd reaction.
Mhm.
Okay, whatever." Or and I've had people ask me if the car is mine, if I'm renting it. I've had someone ask me,
Mm.
"Oh, where did you rent that car from?"
Oh,
As though I couldn't just own it, you know?
right.
Right. So it's kind of a weird reaction I've had then. And then also I remember so right before we left Connecticut, my husband and I went up to Niagara Falls. Um and we went to the Canada side,
Mhm.
and we were coming back or going. No, we were coming back into the US side, and they were asking us 21 questions.
Oh,
How did you
no.
afford this car? How much does the car cost? What is your income? What does your wife do? Now, I wasn't driving.
Yeah.
This is just to get across the board. I just want to go home, you know?
Wow.
And it was like, well, what do you do? Where do you work? What is your title there? What does she do? What does she work? Where's her title? What's her income? How much does the car
Ah,
cost? Is it lease or is it finance? I'm like, and I'm like,
wow.
I'm getting hot. I'm like, and my
Yeah.
husband was like just holding my hand. He's like, Brittany, please. And he's talking to them, and I'm like, I don't understand why this is relevant. What are they asking us this for? So you kind of get those subtle remarks,
Mhm.
those microaggressions,
Mhm.
racial or gender.
Mhm.
And those are the things that I've had. Like I said, it is good and bad with anything. And it kind of makes me. It was kind of like the driving force behind why I wanted to start Live Life Electrified, because I was like, okay, you don't see enough Black women driving a Tesla
Yep.
who aren't celebrities or filthy rich. I just regular person. I worked on my credit. I saved me and my husband, and that was it. And so I kind of think that you might in the world might need to see more of that.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
kind of like drove me to say, okay, I'm going to start something where I'm going to get on Instagram and just post a few pictures and like answer more questions.
Right.
Yeah, I've had mixed reviews since getting the car.
Yeah, I feel like I saw something maybe on your Instagram a while ago about how you went to some Tesla convention and you were one of the very few Black women there.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
I and it was funny because it was co-hosted by EV Hybrid Noir, and they're
Oh,
a group of diverse EV owners, and some people are just enthusiasts. And so they're trying to like their organization is just trying to diversify e-mobility in general, like I was talking about buses and trains and things like that, but especially to kind of normalize Black and brown people in EVs, and to also educate, because even in our communities we don't know about it, and let alone do other communities expect us to be knowledgeable about it, let
yep.
alone owners of those vehicles. And I'm not
Mhm.
just talking about Tesla, I mean just electric anything is like, what are you doing in my space almost? So when I went to that event, it was nice to see so many other like Black people driving who have Teslas, who have Porsche Taycan had just came out, and like people were like, yeah, I just ordered one. And it was like, it was very inspiring,
Yeah.
and other people who had electric motorcycles. It was a really great event. And then there were people, it was at Lenox Mall here in
Oh,
Atlanta.
okay. Mhm.
And so you're familiar, it's kind of like a big parking lot. We were in a pretty big space in the parking lot. So you could kind of see that there's something there. And so people were coming in and out of the mall, and of all different backgrounds. So it was kind of nice to be able to be there, and my husband came with me, and to like show people like, yes, everyone can own an EV. Everyone who looks different, and it's actually a good thing, and especially in our community. I
Mhm.
think it was like some people had never even heard of it, and I'm like, you need to know about this, okay? Because we Black children are the most likely to have asthma of any
Yep.
other group. And so it's like, we need this. We need a way to kind of help with the air pollution and the carbon emissions in our communities especially. So I was so like excited to kind of talk to more people about it. And even people were like, well, talking about affording it, and I'm like, okay, look, sis, let's have a real conversation about the cost of it. And I felt a little bit like, you know what, I'm just going to be as open as I possibly can with everyone, because I wanted to feel more accessible,
Yeah.
to more people. Um,
Mhm.
and then while I was there, I met Ashley Renee, which I think when she was on this podcast, she talked
Uh-huh.
about that, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's
Uh-huh.
talking about me. And
Yeah.
I was fangirling over her because I had recently, that was in 2018. I only got my car in 2017. So I had recently started following her, and I'm like, oh my God, this girl, she's like one of the only people I could find on YouTube who kind of looked like me, just a little
Right.
bit,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
man, I need. and it was, you want to get that perspective sometimes, because maybe another person, they went through the border from Niagara Falls on Canada side to New York and had no problems, and they would never experience that. And that is a fact, actually, because when we were driving, there was another Tesla and they went through past us. So,
Wow.
we're a different driver. So it's like, they may not have had those experiences, but to meet her, she's a woman, she's a black woman, she's also Indian. Like, it was just like, oh my gosh. So it was a great event. And for so many reasons, like getting to meet her, getting to meet more people, and just kind of like talk about it with people who already know about it, which is like, oh my God, I'm in like nerd heaven right now. um, and then also just like telling more people about it, like they never even heard of it. They're like, what's going on here? What is this? What are you guys doing today? And I'm like, let me tell you. So it was a really, really good experience. I mean, I hope they do it again now that we're nearing the end of
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great event that we did.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always good to get out and socialize with people, and then to also, like you said, normalize people of color and electric vehicles.
Yes. Yes, yes. And especially for us,
Yes,
for our
exactly.
own self, because representation really matters.
It
And
does.
I realized that too at that event. Like, man, I am such a fan of Ashley Renee. And I think it's because she like represents people of color,
Yeah.
women, just so many different things. And it was like, man, this is so refreshing. And then it kind of, made me want to do more,
Mhm.
and to kind of contribute more to
Mhm.
that industry, and to like to that to EV world,
Yes.
and sustainability, because like I said, we don't even realize how we kind of already are sustainable.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
So
no, I
yeah,
I think I think you're doing a great job of informing people
thank
more
you.
about electric vehicles and all that. Now, we talk a lot about Tesla, but you've mentioned a little bit about other brands that do have electric vehicles. So can you just, let us know just a few of the maybe top brands that are having electric vehicles?
Oh man. So there are a lot. I'm so
Okay.
excited to say that.
Yeah.
Um, hopefully one day we'll ask like, what companies make gas cars? Like,
Right.
that would be like, that'll be the day, right?
One day.
But there
Uh-huh.
are actually way more options
Mhm.
than I think people may realize. Like, people know Tesla because a little bit of Elon Musk,
Right.
kind of a character on Twitter.
Exactly.
Um, and that's great because he has a lot, and he's also changed the idea of the style of what electric cars used to be.
True.
um but there are some, OGs, so to speak, in the world, like Chevy Bolt,
Okay.
the Nissan Leaf, and these are all cars that are also at the it was called the National Drive Electric Week event that they had here in Atlanta. So all of these cars were there too, not just Tesla.
Mhm.
Porsche just recently came out with the Taycan. It is expensive, but
Yeah, I'm
it is
sure.
very nice. They had one, it was like before they released them, so it was really exciting to see it, and to be able to like go inside the car at the event that they had here in Atlanta, and it's a beautiful car. um Audi also has one, and that's more of an SUV. So that's one
Oh,
thing I will say, is that now, I mean, I'm not sure when the Chevy Bolt and the Nissan Leaf came out. I know they were kind of like first, but they're kind of small hatchback cars.
right.
If you have a large family, that just won't work for you. Or
Mhm.
if that's just not your favorite style of car, I don't know. So for that, is like the Audi has the e-tron, which is more of an SUV feel. And that I think is great, because some people, if you have 3 kids and a dog, you can't have a Chevy Bolt. You just won't, it won't fit.
Right.
Even if you
Mhm.
really wanted to drive electric, I mean, I guess at that point you would have to have 2 cars, which is not always an option for some people. Um, So the Audi e-tron is a really great option. Well, what was the other one? Hyundai also has a SUV called the Kona,
Oh, yeah.
and that's way more affordable than the Audi. So you have now different price points within the SUVs, or EV SUVs, which I think, I love it, and then you have the oh, it just came out, the Ford Mustang Mach E.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, so I think that's is always good when like legacy car makers kind of are entering now the EV realm, because when
Mhm.
they start to do it, I think more people will listen. There are some
Yep.
people who they only like Mustangs.
Right.
And like I said, I'm a car girl, so I get it. You only trust Ford Mustang, and I do understand it, and I understand why even. But now that they're making one, maybe you'll be more inclined to switch to an EV, and I believe it was Ford that said that they're going to start making more of their EVs than of their gas cars. So
Wow. Okay,
yeah,
Ford.
so exactly, exactly. So it's like those are some really good options. And what was the other one? It's more of like a high end Lucid. So this car isn't out yet,
Mhm.
but it's like one that they've kind of revealed, and you can pre-order it. It's called Lucid Air, and it is a beautiful like sedan, and it's very expensive, but it has
Mm.
an amazing battery on it. So that's the other thing, like I was talking about before with the range, you're gonna have 500 miles. It for some people, if you can afford it, is maybe worth that investment for you. And
Right.
then what a lot of these car companies are doing now, they're teaming up and kind of collaborating with some of the big name chargers. So they're paired up with Electrify America, which has charging stations all over America, and Canada, I believe. And then you have others who've paired up with ChargePoint. So if you buy those cars, you're also going to be able to have that assurance of knowing, okay, I have a year free charging, or 10,000 miles. I'm not sure of it exactly, but I know that Electrify America and Lucid are doing a year of free charging. And now you have more options in the type of cars. If you want a sedan, if you want a Porsche, because some people only like Porsche. If you want a Ford Mustang, because some people only trust Ford. I think it's really exciting to see it. It's so many options. And then of course, if you want to just be with the traditional Chevy Bolts or the Nissan Leafs, you can do that too. I think even Cadillac has come out with a kind of an SUV version. So there's sedans, there's SUVs, there's hatchbacks, there's so many different kinds of EV options now. And you were telling me, like, when you were DMing me about
Mhm.
your search for EV, and I was like, I have a list. But I'm constantly updating it because there's so many more cars that keep coming out. And then there are others that are just like we're coming out, like the Hummer. They're trying to come out with an EV. I mean, that used to be a gas guzzler. So for them to
Right?
switch, exactly. So for them to switch is like, that's a big deal. Some people only like Hummers, so they like a big truck feel kind of a car. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, there are lots and lots of options now.
Right. So yes, I did get your list of all the electric vehicles. So if
Yeah.
someone's interested in, just doing the pros and cons, seeing the benefits of different models that are available, then you should definitely get her list. How do people get your list of that?
Oh, well, on my Instagram, I have a
Hmm.
link in my bio, and then
Okay.
also from my blog, livelifeelectrified.com. They're on there too as well. And like I said, I'm always updating it.
Mhm.
because they keep announcing new cars and new cars, and we finally,
Yeah.
like so. And then they're also announcing, like, I like to see when they go into production. So it's a running
Uh-huh.
list that I have, and like I said, one day maybe you won't even need the list, and it'll just be a short list of who makes gas cars.
Well, that's super exciting to see
Yeah.
how far we've come with electric vehicles and just
Yes.
that they're continuing production and it's gaining traction. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
So, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast today. Let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Live Life Electrified. I'm also on Twitter at Live Electrified. And then my blog, www.livelifeelectrified.com.
Love it. Please go follow her. She has so much information on electric vehicles and then just learning what she's doing as far as being more eco-friendly goes is really good to keep up with. And our
Thank
last
you
question,
for having me.
yes, of course. Our last question is, what does it mean to you to be a sustainable brown girl?
Oh, um, I think it's kind of like wielding our natural, almost innate inclinations about just living. Like I was saying before, how we are already so sustainable in our different cultures and then just the way that we do things. Um, I think that the term sustainability maybe didn't exist at that time, but a lot of Black and Brown people are sustainable. It's just like our natural way of living in like a certain connectedness with the planet. And I think that it involves, wielding that knowledge that we already have. It's almost instinctual. I
Yeah,
think it's wielding that knowledge to benefit and protect the planet and our environment. And when I say environment, I mean like the planet, the animals, and people from all walks of life. It can't be just one group. And that's where that brown girl comes in, because as a sustainable brown girl, you also are going to, protect the planet and the environment while also kind of making sure our communities are
yeah,
included in
yeah,
those discussions and in those solutions towards benefiting and improving some of the damage that's already been done but can be fixed. I think that is a part of being like a sustainable brown girl, is like to include us and protect us while also helping to benefit the entire planet. And we have to make sure that all of those diverse cultures are involved, because even amongst the Black and Brown community, it's so layered, it's so diverse even within those communities. So I just
hmm
think that inclusion is important, and that is what
yes.
we do as sustainable brown girls.
Yes, I love that. So well said and so completely true. We definitely, as sustainable brown girls, can advocate for our communities in the
Yes.
environmental movement. So, thank you so much for sharing that, Brittany. And thanks for coming on to the podcast today. It was
Thank
such a
you so
pleasure.
much for having me. This was so fun. I am an avid listener, so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. And everyone, go follow her on Instagram, Twitter, and be sure to look at her blog too. Talk to you next time.